My name is Margaret Hale, and I am 62 years old. For most of my adult life, I believed that stability depended on two things: the truth you speak and the people you trust. I married my husband, Daniel, when I was 41. We were both late bloomers, both somewhat scarred from earlier relationships, and both grateful to have found something steady at last. I built a life with him that felt like the warm, reliable rhythm of a late summer afternoon. I worked as a hospital administrator for nearly 3 decades, the kind of job that taught me to observe quietly, analyze carefully, and never take a story at face value. I'm retired now, but those instincts never left me. They sit in me like a second spine. When something bends wrong, I feel it. For years, Sundays meant dinner at our small brick house on Pullview Lane. I cooked, Daniel set the table, and his mother, Carol, arrived exactly at 4 o'clock carrying a dessert she'd bought at whatever bakery had a coupon that week. She always announced the coupon as though she'd outsmarted a global conspiracy. I used to find it charming. Carol was a complicated woman. She raised Daniel alone after her husband walked out when Daniel was a teenager. She liked to remind everyone that she'd done it all without help, though she also liked to remind me how fortunate I was that she had raised a provider. Those were her words the first time I met her, spoken with a tight smile and a hand that lingered on my shoulder long enough to feel like a claim rather than a welcome. Still, I tried to respect her. She was Daniel's mother, after all, and he loved her. And truthfully, I pitied her more than I disliked her. Her world had narrowed over the years. First to her job at the grocery store, and then, after retirement, to her television, her complaints, and the memories that constantly rearranged themselves to cast her as the underappreciated hero. Over time, the requests began. At first they were small: $20 for a prescription she claimed insurance wouldn't cover, or help with a car repair she insisted was an emergency. I didn't ask questions. When someone is proud, even asking for help is an act of courage. I admired that about her. But then the requests grew into something else, something larger, heavier, with a sharpness to it. She asked for help paying her cable bill, then her electric bill. She asked for just a little help with her rent. And although Daniel tried to set boundaries, Carol had a way of invoking guilt like it was a sacred family tradition. The truth is, I could afford to help her. I had saved carefully, lived modestly, and retired with a comfortable cushion. Daniel was still working as an engineer, steady and dependable. We didn't live lavishly, but we lived without fear. Looking back now, I realized that was what made me vulnerable. On the day everything began to unravel, it was late autumn, and the neighborhood trees had turned the color of rusted brass. Carol had come over for dinner, and as she sat down, she sighed with the heavy theatrical breath she reserved for moments when she wanted attention. "I raised a provider," she said, glancing at Daniel with a proud smile before turning her eyes deliberately to me. "But Margaret, I need you to pay my bills again." The word again landed heavier than she expected. I felt my chest tighten. Something in her tone shifted from asking to expecting, and something in Daniel's stillness told me he knew more than I did. I set my fork down and asked as calmly as I could, "Which bills, Carol?" But instead of answering, she folded her arms, leaned back, and said, "All of them. Surely you can manage that." Daniel looked at his hands instead of at me. And in that moment, I felt the first tear in the fabric of our life together. Because suddenly I knew, this wasn't just about money. It was about something far deeper. Something Daniel hadn't told me. Something Carol believed she could use as leverage. And as I sat there waiting for the explanation they didn't want to give, I realized I was about to discover a truth that would shift the ground under all three of us. The room went quiet. Then Carol opened her mouth to speak. Carol's voice trembled with a mix of indignation and entitlement as she finally said, "I'm months behind. Rent, utilities, phone, everything. Daniel promised you'd take care of it." Promised. That word froze the blood in my veins. Daniel's chair creaked as he shifted. "Mom," he whispered, "that's not what we discussed." But Carol waved him off. "Oh, stop. You said she'd handle it. You said she has plenty of savings. Don't back out now." I looked at Daniel, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't agreement or defiance. It was guilt. Thick, silent guilt. "What exactly did you promise her?" I asked, my voice steady, though my hands had begun to tremble. Daniel swallowed. "It wasn't a promise. I told her we might be able to help. Just until she gets settled." "Settled?" I repeated. "She retired 10 years ago." Carol's eyes narrowed. "Don't speak to me like I'm foolish. You know very well Social Security isn't enough anymore. And Daniel told me everything about your accounts, so don't act like you're struggling. My breath stopped. Daniel told her everything about your accounts. My accounts. My retirement. My savings. Information I had always treated with privacy and respect. And Daniel had given it away. I felt something sharp twist inside my chest. An emotional pivot, the kind that moves a person from confusion to clarity in a single heartbeat. Why would you share my personal finances with your mother? I asked. Daniel's voice cracked. I didn't mean to. She was panicking. She said she might lose her apartment. I thought if she understood that we weren't desperate ourselves, she'd calm down. Carol scoffed. And now she's acting like I'm trying to scam her. Your family, Margaret. This is what families do. I folded my hands in front of me. Asking for help isn't the issue. Expecting it is. She leaned forward. You owe me, Margaret. I raised the man who supports your life. The words landed like a slap. Daniel jolted upright. Mom, don't. Oh, hush, she snapped. I'm not wrong. My voice dropped to a near whisper. What do you think I owe you for, Carol? She smiled a cool, knowing smile. For having access to my son's paycheck. For getting to retire early while he still works. For the roof over your head. For everything he gives you. I stared at her, stunned into stillness. Daniel pressed his hands to his face. Mom, please. But Carol wasn't finished. You have money. I know you do. And I know you don't have anyone else to spend it on. So either you help me, or I might have to reveal some things Daniel probably hoped you'd never learn. The room shrank around me. Revenge doesn't begin with anger. It begins with a detail like this, tiny but poisonous. I leaned back in my chair, my heartbeat steadying. What things? Carol tilted her head, savoring the moment. Oh, we'll get into that. But I want an answer first. Daniel reached across the table, his voice barely above a murmur. Mom, don't. I didn't look at him. My eyes were on her. And what I saw wasn't a woman in need. It was a woman with information she believed could control us. No, I said softly. Carol blinked. No, I will not pay your bills. Not until I know exactly what you think you have to hold over our heads. Her lips curved into a smug smile. One far too confident for a woman whose life depended on the goodwill of others. Well then, she said, I suppose it's time for you to learn what your husband has been hiding from you. And as she opened her purse and pulled out a folded stack of papers, I realized this wasn't a simple conflict. This was a betrayal she had been preparing for. The papers hit the table. Daniel's face went pale. And the truth, whatever it was finally about to come out. The papers were yellowed at the edges. They had clearly been handled and weaponized many times before. Carol unfolded them with a smug flourish, as though she were presenting evidence in a courtroom she'd already judged and won. I didn't want it to come to this, she said, though her eyes sparkled with something close to delight. But if you refuse to help, then you have a right to know what Daniel did. Daniel clenched his jaw. Mom, please don't do this. Do what? I asked quietly. Carol slid the papers toward me. And suddenly the past, my husband's past, was in my hands. I scanned the first page. It was a notice of delinquent student loan payments from more than 20 years ago. Then an old collection notice. Then another. I looked up at him. Daniel, you told me you paid these off before we married. I did, he whispered. I paid every cent. Carol laughed. Oh, don't pretend you don't remember what you asked of me. Daniel's face fell. And I saw it, there, in the slump of his shoulders. Shame. Mom, he said, barely audible. That was one time. One time when I was 32 and desperate. Carol turned to me. Your husband borrowed thousands from me. Promised he'd pay it back with interest. I kept every record. And he never paid me a single cent. Daniel's eyes snapped up. That's not true. I paid you. You said it was enough. You said we were even. She scoffed. I said we were fine. That isn't the same, Daniel. Stop spinning stories. I studied the paperwork more closely and noticed something odd. Her records were just photocopies of the same notice repeated, with different handwritten dates scribbled in the margins. Nothing official. Nothing binding. Carol, I said, why did you keep these for so long? She lifted her chin. Because I knew someday he'd forget where he came from. And judging by how you live now, your nice furniture, your remodeled kitchen, your early retirement, I'd say I was right. Daniel buried his face in his hands. And I understood. This wasn't about money. This was about power. Carol had spent her life defining herself as a solitary warrior, A woman who raised a son single-handedly and demanded repayment not in gratitude, but in lifelong obligation. Daniel had spent equally long trying to escape the gravitational pull of her expectations. And I had stepped into their dynamic without understanding its depth. When did she last bring this up? I asked Daniel. He exhaled. Years ago. I thought it was resolved. We made an agreement. I helped her financially when she retired, and that was supposed to settle the past. Carol shot him a glare. You helped me? Please. A few hundred here and there. Pennies compared to what you owed. But you said, I can say whatever I want, Daniel. You're my son. There it was. Her motive, naked and unvarnished. Her son belonged to her. His success belonged to her. His marriage, though she never said it outright, belonged to her. I realized then that Carol didn't want money from me. She wanted ownership. Authority. The ability to dictate the terms of our life, because she believed she deserved it more than I did. I folded the papers neatly and placed them back in front of her. These don't prove a debt, I said. They only prove that you've been holding on to resentment for decades. Her face tightened. You're choosing his side, then. There aren't sides, I said. There's only the truth. And I have it, she snapped. I shook my head slowly. No, Carol. What you have is a story you've rewritten so many times you don't realize it's fiction. Daniel's breath hitched, but I didn't look at him yet. Because in that moment, a new understanding settled over me. If I wanted the truth, real truth, I needed to investigate Carol's finances, Daniel's past payments, and the nature of the supposed debt she claimed. If she was manipulating us, she had done so for years. And her confidence tonight suggested she believed no one would ever challenge her. She was wrong. But before I could say anything more, she stood abruptly, grabbed her purse, and hissed, If you won't help willingly, then you'll force me to take this further. She stormed out the door. And as it slammed behind her, Daniel whispered, Margaret, it's worse than you think. I turned slowly toward him. What do you mean? I asked. He closed his eyes. And when he opened them again, tears were gathering. Because she's not just lying about the debt, he said. She's lying about something else too. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt different, smaller almost, but also sharper, as though the walls were listening. Daniel sat beside me in the dim light of our bedroom, wringing his hands the way he always did when he felt cornered. Start from the beginning, I said softly. He took a long breath. She's worse off than she admits. She's been behind on bills for years, but she always made it sound like something temporary. I tried to help. I did. But she refuses to budget. She refuses to downsize. She refuses to accept any real solution. She just demands. And the debt, she's rewritten it in her mind. I paid her back. I swear to you I did. But she twists it so she can use it anytime she feels I'm slipping away from her. Slipping away. There it was again, the same invisible tension I'd always sensed between them, but never understood. The next morning, I began my investigation. I started with something simple, checking our own finances. I logged into our joint accounts, then my personal accounts, and scanned the history. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just confirming that nothing had been quietly siphoned out. To my relief, everything looked normal. Then I turned to Carol. Over the years, I'd helped her set up online billing accounts, her utilities, her phone service, even her insurance portal. I still had access, and she knew it. At the time, she said she trusted me more than anyone else on earth, which I now saw was simply another manipulation tactic. I opened her electric account first. Past due. Again. Then her internet. In a payment plan she had repeatedly broken. Then her credit card. Maxed out. The minimum payments had been made on time, but only barely. None of it surprised me, but what did surprise me was the pattern. She consistently overspent in the same categories. Subscriptions, shopping, delivery, food. There were no medical emergencies, no unexpected repairs. Just compulsive spending. But something else caught my attention. 6 debits labeled transfers. All within the last 90 days. All in round numbers, large ones. I leaned closer. Each transfer went to the same person. A man named Robert Hale. My breath caught. Daniel, I called. He rushed into the office. What is it? I pointed at the screen. He froze. My father, his father, the man who abandoned them, was receiving money from Carol. I pulled up her bank statements. She'd sent him nearly $4,000 in 3 months. She told us they haven't spoken in years, I whispered. Daniel looked shattered. She always said he wanted nothing to do with her. That she raised me alone. She did raise you alone, I said. But not because he refused. Because she cut him off. I clicked further back through the records. More transfers. Regular ones. Over many years. Daniel pressed a hand to his mouth. She lied to me my entire life. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Daniel, she wasn't asking for help. She was funding your father. He staggered back. Why would she do that? I realized then that Carol didn't want money from me. She wanted ownership. Authority. The ability to dictate the terms of our life, because she believed she deserved it more than I did. I folded the papers neatly and placed them back in front of her. These don't prove a debt, I said. They only prove that you've been holding on to resentment for decades. Her face tightened. You're choosing his side, then. There aren't sides, I said. There's only the truth. And I have it, she snapped. I shook my head slowly. No, Carol. What you have is a story you've rewritten so many times you don't realize it's fiction. Daniel's breath hitched, but I didn't look at him yet. Because in that moment, a new understanding settled over me. If I wanted the truth, real truth, I needed to investigate Carol's finances, Daniel's past payments, and the nature of the supposed debt she claimed. If she was manipulating us, she had done so for years. And her confidence tonight suggested she believed no one would ever challenge her. She was wrong. But before I could say anything more, she stood abruptly, grabbed her purse, and hissed, "If you won't help willingly, then you'll force me to take this further." She stormed out the door. And as it slammed behind her, Daniel whispered, "Margaret, it's worse than you think." I turned slowly toward him. "What do you mean?" I asked. He closed his eyes. And when he opened them again, tears were gathering. "Because she's not just lying about the debt," he said. "She's lying about something else too." I didn't sleep that night. The house felt different, smaller almost, but also sharper, as though the walls were listening. Daniel sat beside me in the dim light of our bedroom, wringing his hands the way he always did when he felt cornered. "Start from the beginning," I said softly. He took a long breath. "She's worse off than she admits. She's been behind on bills for years, but she always made it sound like something temporary. I tried to help. I did. But she refuses to budget. She refuses to downsize. She refuses to accept any real solution. She just demands. And the debt, she's rewritten it in her mind. I paid her back. I swear to you I did. But she twists it so she can use it any time she feels I'm slipping away from her." Slipping away. There it was again, the same invisible tension I'd always sensed between them, but never understood. The next morning, I began my investigation. I started with something simple, checking our own finances. I logged into our joint accounts, then my personal accounts, and scanned the history. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just confirming that nothing had been quietly siphoned out. To my relief, everything looked normal. Then I turned to Carol. Over the years, I'd helped her set up online billing accounts, her utilities, her phone service, even her insurance portal. I still had access, and she knew it. At the time, she said she trusted me more than anyone else on earth, which I now saw was simply another manipulation tactic. I opened her electric account first. Past due. Again. Then her internet. In a payment plan she had repeatedly broken. Then her credit card. Maxed out. The minimum payments had been made on time, but only barely. None of it surprised me, but what did surprise me was the pattern. She consistently overspent in the same categories. Subscriptions, shopping, delivery food. There were no medical emergencies, no unexpected repairs. Just compulsive spending. But something else caught my attention. 6 debits labeled transfers. All within the last 90 days. All in round numbers, large ones. I leaned closer. Each transfer went to the same person. A man named Robert Hale. My breath caught. "Daniel," I called. He rushed into the office. "What is it?" I pointed at the screen. He froze. My father, his father, the man who abandoned them, was receiving money from Carol. I pulled up her bank statements. She'd sent him nearly $4,000 in 3 months. "She told us they haven't spoken in years," I whispered. Daniel looked shattered. She always said he wanted nothing to do with her. That she raised me alone. "She did raise you alone," I said. But not because he refused. Because she cut him off. I clicked further back through the records. More transfers. Regular ones. Over many years. Daniel pressed a hand to his mouth. "She lied to me my entire life." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Daniel, she wasn't asking for help. She was funding your father." He staggered back. Why would she do that?" Messages between her and Robert filled the screen, the tone desperate and abrasive. Daniel stared in disbelief. "Mom, you've been talking to him for years." She flinched but didn't deny it. "And sending him money," he said. "A lot of money. He needed help," she said. "He's ill. He's alone. And you told me he didn't want us," Daniel said. "You told me he vanished." "He practically did," she snapped. "He was useless. He didn't want responsibility." "So you hid him," I said quietly. "You hid the fact that you were still supporting him. Because if Daniel knew the truth, he wouldn't carry the guilt you used to control him." Carol glared at me. "Don't pretend you understand our family. You married in late. You don't know anything about how hard we struggled. Everything Daniel has, his education, his success, it came from me." "Yes," I said, "and he's grateful. We both are. But gratitude doesn't mean servitude." Her mouth twisted. "I never asked for servitude." "No," I said. "You demanded it." She stood abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this." "You do," I said firmly, "because we're not finished." She hesitated. I clicked to the next screen. Her email draft appeared. The message she wrote to me. "If you won't help, you don't deserve Daniel." Daniel gasped. "Mom." Her eyes filled with something like panic, but she quickly masked it with rage. "That wasn't meant for you to see," she snapped. "And yet," I said softly, "you wrote it." She glared at me. I was angry. "You were being selfish." "I was setting boundaries," I said. "Boundaries you've never respected." Daniel leaned forward, voice trembling. "Mom, why? Why go this far?" Her composure cracked. For the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. "Because," she whispered, "I'm scared." Daniel softened. "Of what?" She looked at him with bitterness that wasn't aimed at him, but at the years she could never undo. "Of being forgotten," she said. "Of being left behind. Your father left. My parents died early. My friends moved away or passed. And you." Her voice wavered. "You're all I have left, Daniel. If you pull away, I have nothing." I exhaled slowly. There it was. The motive behind everything. Fear. Control was her armor. Manipulation was her way of ensuring she was never abandoned again. But understanding the motive didn't excuse the damage. Daniel's eyes softened with sorrow. "Mom, you won't lose me. But I can't live under manipulation anymore." Her jaw clenched. "Manipulation? After everything I've done." I cut in gently. "Carol, love is not a currency. And you've turned your relationship with Daniel into a debt that can never be repaid." Her eyes flickered. Not with understanding, not yet, but with the realization that her grip had weakened. And she didn't know how to tighten it again. She stood slowly, clutching her purse like a shield. "This conversation is over," she said. "If you won't help me, then I'll take care of things myself." I watched her walk to the door. But just before she stepped outside, she turned back. "And don't think I'm finished with this," she said coldly. "Not by a long shot." Then the door closed behind her. And I knew, with absolute clarity, that this was far from over. 2 days passed. 2 long, brittle days filled with unease. Daniel barely spoke. I gave him space, knowing his entire childhood narrative had crumbled at his feet. And I knew Carol. Her nature was predictable in its unpredictability. She wouldn't let the confrontation end where we left it. And I was right. On the 3rd morning, she called. Her voice was cold, stripped of theatrics. "I need to speak with you alone, Margaret." Daniel shook his head frantically, mouthing no, but I already knew what I needed to do. "Where?" I asked. "My apartment." "Noon." She hung up. As the hours crept forward, I prepared not with anger, but with evidence. I printed the bank transfers, the message history, a clear timeline of her spending habits, and more importantly, a set of resources, programs, subsidies, budgeting tools, support options. Ethical revenge is never about destruction. It's about unveiling truth so thoroughly that the other person can no longer operate in shadow. At noon, I arrived. Her apartment smelled of perfume and dust. She stood in the kitchen with her arms folded, shoulders stiff. "You came," she said, surprised. "I told you I would." She gestured to the table. "Sit." I did. She remained standing, as though elevation could still give her the dominance she wanted. "You've turned Daniel against me," she said. "I've revealed the truth," I replied. She hissed. "Truth is subjective. Evidence isn't." I opened the folder and removed the timeline I'd made. "You've been sending your ex-husband money for years. You've lied to Daniel about him. You've weaponized guilt. You threatened me. You manipulated our finances. You demanded control. And you attempted to make me the villain so you could continue playing the martyr. Her hand trembled. I continued. Carol, this isn't a moral failing. It's a behavioral pattern rooted in fear, trauma, and pride. But it ends today. She leaned forward. Or what? You'll cut me out? I shook my head. No. You'll cut yourself out if you keep living like this. She faltered. I placed the resources in front of her. This is how you regain stability, not by draining your son, and certainly not by trying to manipulate me. She stared at the papers, eyes darting between the words she didn't want to read. Then the anger returned, sharp and reflexive. You think you're better than me. No, I said softly. I think you're scared, and your fear is hurting the people you love. Her voice cracked. I did everything alone, Margaret. Everything. And no one cared. Not one person asked how I was surviving. I'm asking now, I said. But I won't enable self-destruction. And I won't let you destroy your son's peace. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back with stubborn fury. What do you expect me to do? Step into truth. Accept help the right way. And stop demanding repayment for the past. She sank slowly into the chair across from me. For the first time, she looked small, an aging woman realizing the pedestal she'd built was crumbling beneath her own weight. Daniel hates me, she whispered. No, I said gently. He's grieving the mother he thought he had. But he still loves you. She wiped her cheek angrily. Then why isn't he here? Because you didn't ask for him. You asked for me. Silence fell. Heavy, fragile, honest. Finally, she whispered, I don't know how to change. I nodded. Then we'll guide you. But on one condition, the manipulation ends. All of it. She swallowed. And if I fail? I held her gaze. Then you'll lose us both. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she nodded. A small, trembling nod. I'll try. It wasn't victory. But it was truth. And truth was enough. But as I stood to leave, Carol said one last thing. Her voice soft, almost broken. Margaret, there's something else. Something I haven't told either of you. I turned back slowly. What is it? She looked up at me with eyes that carried decades of secrecy. I'm not the only one he's been taking money from. My breath caught. Who? She hesitated, then whispered the last name I expected to hear. Daniel. The drive home felt twice as long as usual. Carol's final confession looped in my mind. The quiet, fragile words that changed the direction of everything. Daniel isn't the only one she's been giving money to. Daniel is also taking money from someone else. A different someone. And Carol knew. When I reached home, Daniel was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on his knees, eyes distant. He looked up as I approached. How did it go? He asked quietly. I sat beside him, steadying my breath. She admitted things, I said softly. More than I expected. He nodded. I figured she might. She always breaks down after she's pushed too far. I turned to him. There's something else, Daniel. He stiffened. What? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. She said, You're receiving money from someone else. His face went pale, almost translucent. Margaret, he whispered. I can explain. My heart sank, not because I feared betrayal, but because I recognized the tone. The guilt. The pain. He wasn't defensive. He was ashamed. Tell me everything, I said. He covered his face with his hands. It's my father. The world seemed to tilt. You're getting money from him? I asked carefully. Not getting, he said quickly. I'm paying him back. I blinked. Paying him back for what? He swallowed. For covering Mom's debts years ago. My breath froze. He looked at me with eyes full of exhaustion. It wasn't just her helping him. Decades ago, when I was in college, Mom fell behind on everything. Rent. Car payment. Utilities. She wouldn't let me know how bad it was. But he did. He called me behind her back. That doesn't sound like your father, I said. He nodded. It wasn't. It was the first and only responsible thing he ever did. He paid her bills. All of them. Thousands. He said it was the least he could do after leaving. And you've been paying him back ever since? Daniel shook his head. Not always. Sometimes. When he asks. When he needs it. And Carol knows? She knows now, he whispered. She saw the transfer once and confronted me. I told her the story. She swore she'd never bring it up. But you know how she is. I closed my eyes slowly. The web of guilt between them was a generational knot. Carol used guilt to control. Robert used guilt to extract. And Daniel, sweet, loyal Daniel, carried the weight alone. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. He took my hand. Because you already do so much. You retired early. You carried our savings for years. I didn't want you to worry about old ghosts. I rested my head lightly against his shoulder. Daniel, I whispered. Sharing burdens isn't weakness. It's marriage. He exhaled shakily. I know. I'm sorry. I squeezed his hand. We'll resolve this. Together. He nodded, eyes shining. What about her? He asked. She's agreed to stop manipulating. She admitted she's scared. She's willing to try to change. He gave a small, fragile laugh. I'll believe it when I see it. So will I said. But we start with truth. And now we have it. At dinner that night, we crafted a plan. First, formal boundaries. Emotional, financial, logistical. Second, financial restructuring for Carol, automated payments, a strict budget, support programs. Third, a single condition for continued involvement, complete transparency. Fourth, addressing Daniel's father. That was the hardest part. He didn't want contact. But we couldn't allow an open-ended financial drain anymore. We confront him, I said. Daniel flinched. He'll twist things. Then we anchor ourselves in facts, I replied. We are not responsible for his choices. Or his debts. Or his life. Daniel nodded slowly, absorbing the truth he had never been told. The next morning, we drove to the small trailer park where Robert lived. The place smelled of beer, rust, and ash. The siding was dented. The window screens torn. Daniel knocked. A moment later, a tired-looking man opened the door, thin, unshaven, and defeated. His father. Danny, he said. Daniel straightened. We need to talk. Inside, the air was thick with stale smoke. I spoke gently but firmly. Robert, the payments stopped today. He blinked. What payments? Daniel crossed his arms. The money I've been sending. And the money Mom's been sending. Robert scoffed. I needed it. You know I did. That doesn't make it our responsibility, Daniel said. Robert laughed bitterly. You two think you're better than me now? No, I said softly. But we're no longer participating in dysfunction. His eyes narrowed. Your mother put you up to this? No, Daniel said. This is about our lives. Our marriage. Our boundaries. Robert spat on the floor. Fine. Cut me off. Don't come crying when she turns on you. Mom already tried, Daniel said. We handled it. Robert sneered. Good luck. She's always been dramatic. Daniel stiffened. She's not the villain in your story. Or the hero. She's just human. And so are you. But we're done being collateral damage. We left him there, angry, bewildered, powerless. As we walked back to the car, Daniel's shoulders loosened in a way I hadn't seen in years. What now? He asked quietly. Now, I said, we face the consequences. He nodded. And we drove home, ready to rebuild from truth. But little did I know, the true consequence wasn't his father's reaction. It was how Carol would respond when she learned the money flow had been severed. And she responded faster than I expected. At 6:42 p.m., my phone rang. Her voice was trembling. Margaret, I need your help. Her voice had none of its former sharpness. No bite. No theatrics. Just fear. What happened? I asked. I got a call, she whispered. From him. Your ex-husband? Yes. He's furious. He said Daniel came and cut him off. That's correct, I said. She inhaled shakily. He said I ruined everything. That he expected money this month. That he wants me to make up the difference. I closed my eyes. And will you? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know how to not give in. He knows exactly what to say to make me feel responsible. Carol, I said gently, you are not responsible for him. For the first time, she didn't argue. She didn't fight. Her voice cracked. Then who am I responsible for? Yourself, I said. And maybe, for the first time, responsibility means facing your patterns instead of feeding them. She was silent. Then she whispered, I'm afraid. I know, I said. But fear isn't a compass. It's a signal. A chance to stop and reevaluate. She began to cry, not the angry, manipulative tears she used to deploy, but something older and deeper. Decades of swallowed emotions dissolving at last. After a long moment, she said, I want to change. I don't know how, but I want to. That's enough for today, I said. We'll help you find the tools. But with boundaries. With truth. And with accountability. She nodded, though I couldn't see it. Thank you, she whispered. And tell Daniel. I'm sorry. I hung up the phone and sat quietly for a moment. Daniel emerged from the hallway. "How is she?" he asked. "Scared," I said. "But ready." He sighed, relieved and heartbroken all at once. That night, we began a new chapter. Not just for Carol, but for the three of us. The next month, we helped her set up a structured budget. Automated payments. A limit on discretionary spending. Therapy appointments. And clear rules for financial interaction. She stumbled at first. Everyone does when unlearning decades of survival patterns. But she improved, slowly and honestly. The guilt web began to unravel, piece by piece. And Daniel, he found his footing again. Without the weight of secrecy. Without inherited shame. Without the shadow of his parents' failures stretching into his adulthood. One evening, weeks later, he asked me, "Do you ever regret getting involved with my family?" I smiled softly and took his hand. "No. Families are complicated. People are complicated. But truth is simple. And we found it." He kissed my forehead. As for Robert, we heard nothing more. Dysfunction loses its power once its fuel is cut off. Silence was both consequence and closure. Life didn't return to what it was before Carol's demands. It became something better. More honest. More intentional. More free. And as I sit here now, 62 years old, retired, reflective, I offer this to anyone listening. Revenge doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is illumination. Shining enough truth that the shadows lose their grip. Sometimes justice is simply choosing not to continue the cycle. And sometimes healing begins the moment you say, "No more." If this story resonated with you, tell me what part struck you the most. Your stories matter too.